What if I told you that the vast majority of video games ever released today are only available through piracy? They can no longer be bought in stores. There are no official ways left to acquire them. There is a very comfortable idea that the video game industry likes to repeat. The idea that games are always available, that the past is safe, that everything can be accessed again at any time. But that isn't true. In reality, video games are one of the most fragile art forms ever created. They don't live only on discs, they don't live only in cartridges. They depend on hardware, operating systems, servers, licenses, contracts, corporate decisions, and above all, commercial interest. When any of those pieces disappears, the game begins to die. And the most ironic part is that, in most cases, the ones accelerating this death are not the players. They are the very companies that created these games. As mentioned before, today there is an invisible library, an entire library of games that can no longer be purchased. Not because they are forbidden, not because they are dangerous, but because they are simply not longer profitable. And if you've played any of these games in recent years, there is a very high chance that you are only able to do that for one reason: piracy. A game doesn't die the day its servers shut down. It doesn't die when it leaves digital storefronts. And it doesn't die when a console is discontinued. It begins to die when there is no longer a legitimate way to access it. When that happens, the game stops being a product and becomes a relic, a memory, a reference to nostalgia videos, but no longer a living experience. This happens all the time. Licensed games disappear when contracts expire. Older games are ignored because they don't sell enough. Games from the past generations are labeled obsolete. This result is simple. The history of video games is not being preserved, it is being abandoned. Scarface, The World Is Yours was released in 2006, an expensive, ambitious, violent game directly inspired by one of the most iconic films in cinema history. For years, it was a cult classic. Today, it simply does not exist officially. You can't find Scarface in Steam, you can't find it in the PlayStation Store, you can find it on the Xbox Store. There is no remastered version. No digital release, no collection. And why? Licensing. License expire. Renewing them costs money, and preservation does not generate immediate financial return. For a company, it's far easier to let a game die than it is to negotiate its rights to exist. But the game didn't die. It is still being played, it's still being discussed, it's still being remembered. Not because the industry wanted it to survive, but because someone decided to copy it. Without that copy, Scarface would have become a ghost name, something that existed once, but can no longer be experienced today. Scarface is not an exception, it is a symptom. Now let's talk about a game that doesn't depend on external licenses, doesn't rely on films, doesn't rely on famous soundtracks. Godhand, an original game, creative, strange, difficult, and completely ignored by the very company that created it. Capcom has never re-released Godhand, never showed you interest in preserving it. Today, if you want to play Godhand, your options are simple: either buy a physical copy for absurd prices, or turn to piracy. And it's worth remembering, the money for reselling a physical copy does not go to the original publisher, it goes to whoever is selling it. In other words, there is no scenario that Capcom make money from this game today, and once again, the question rises: who kept this game alive? Not the company, the players did. The PlayStation 1 defined an entire generation, hundreds of games, hundreds of unique experiences. How many of them can you buy today? Very few. The vast majority were never re-released, never remastered, never included in collections. Some were forgotten because they wouldn't sell well, others because their source code was lost, others because no one thought the effort was worth it. Without piracy, this game simply would not exist anymore. Another example is Master System. Probably one of the cruelest cases in the video game history. Many games never left Japan, they were never officially translated, they never received modern versions. Phantasy Star, now a living franchise, almost lost entire chapters of its own history. It was his fanbase who translated them, the fanbase who preserved them, fans who decided those games didn't deserve to die. This wasn't done for money, it was done for memory. Black and White, an incredible game when you play as a god and shape an entire civilization. You can dominate, teach, win through war, or win through influence. A brilliant, complex, unique game, today preserved only through piracy. Def Jam Fight for New York, a PlayStation 2 classic now officially unavailable. Mortal Kombat Shaolin Monks, the Guitar Hero series, and so many others. Games that can no longer be purchased officially, only accessed through piracy. I will admit this video is a very personal bias. I grew up playing the PlayStation 1, I grew up playing obscure fighting games, I grew up playing The Simpsons Wrestling, terrible Shrek games, Power Rangers, the original Resident Evil trilogy. On the Nintendo 64, how many games today are simply unavailable? The South Park game, Jet Force Gemini, and if it weren't for piracy, all those games would be dead. Look, piracy is illegal, and yes, it should be fought. But what happens when there is no other way to keep a game alive? The industry likes to treat everything as a crime. Copying is copying, context doesn't matter. But there is a massive difference between commercial piracy and cultural preservation. When there is no longer a legal way to buy a game, who is actually being harmed? No one loses money, no one stops selling anything. What exists is simply the maintenance of something that was already abandoned. Piracy has become, in practice, the largest video game museum in the world. An illegal museum, but a living one. And there is the most uncomfortable truth of the digital era. You don't own your games, you own a temporary license, revocable, conditional. Marcus Persson, the creator of Minecraft, has many controversial opinions, but in one thing, I agree with him. He once said, if buying a game is not a purchase, then pirating them is not a theft. He's also part of the Stop Killing Games campaign, which aims to preserve games that would otherwise disappear. Digital games can vanish, servers shut down, accounts get banned, stores are taken offline, and when that happens, it doesn't matter how much you've paid, you lose access. Piracy exists because the market decided that control is more important than preservation. And there's a paradox here. The industry accuses piracy of killing games, but it is the industry itself that abandons them. They create worlds, and then lets them to rot. Piracy doesn't come from hatred, it comes from fear of forgetting. Games doesn't die when they are stopped selling, they die when no one's fighting for them. And today, the ones fighting aren't the companies, they are players, amateur archivists, entire communities, people who refuse to let the past disappear. Maybe piracy isn't the problem, maybe it is simply the response to an industry that doesn't know how to take care of its own history. Because in the end, preservation isn't just about profit, it is about memory, and without memory, no art survives. So my conclusion is, if the industry are not going to preserve those games, why is it so bad to do it for ourselves? If they already abandoned those games, if they are not selling that for everyone, if they are not going to make any profit from it, what is the problem about maintaining those histories alive, those memories alive? At the end, games are art, and if no one are playing them, they are going to be forgotten. Please, write down your opinion in the comments. Thank you to everyone who watched it until the end. If you enjoyed it, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you around.